Hi and welcome to the 28th episode of Dreamers and Doers, where I interview people who follow their passion and use it to make the world better. And I think that's you. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Oh man, it's a pleasure to be here. It's honestly, I'm so grateful and so appreciative to be given the opportunity to talk about my life and my experiences. So thank you. And if you're listening or watching, thank you so much for doing that, because it's just beautiful. So
I can tell you it's not going to be a waste of your time. Charlie, you're honestly one of the most interesting people I've met.
Aww.
So we usually finish the podcast with a hug, but we'll start.
Yes, of course, always.
With this. We're used to hugging because we met at Date with Destiny, where you hug a lot.
Yes, you do.
And it's a very, very powerful experience, but also quite intense. And would you say it qualifies as a self-transcendent experience?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's so many experiences in our lives that can be seen as us transcending our own selves and who we currently identify with and who we can develop and grow into. I think Tony Robbins, in particular Date with Destiny, is just a really great opportunity for you to enter into a beautiful state and to realize parts of yourself that may have not come to the forefront of your reality so strongly. Which is why I think that course has really benefited so many people, including us.
Definitely. And I will go back to that a bit later, but now we'll start with, because we might have a few people who are like, self-transcendence, what?
Yes.
Like, what is self-transcendence? Actually, I'm quite interested too, because I'm not sure I'm that clear on the answer. So what would be your definition of self-transcendence?
Yeah, well, I think the best place to start with self-transcendence is establishing, especially for this interview and podcast as well, is why. Like, why should I be interested in self-transcendence at all? Like, what benefit or value does it add to me or my life? And I think really getting to the heart of that is linking self-transcendence to the self. Like, it is inherently a part of the word. And so you don't feel like it's too new agey or too spiritually based, I've got some Oxford definitions from from the dictionary, because it's legit if it's from the dictionary. So I'll give you the definitions and then my interpretation of self-transcendence. So self in the Oxford definition is a person's essential being that distinguishes them from others, especially considered as the object of introspective or reflexive action. So the really key is that the distinguishment. So like it's you as opposed to something else. So it's that separation between you and others. And then transcendence is existence or experience beyond the normal or physical level. And I think that definition is very, very apt for what we'll be speaking about, because it talks about the physical, which is really key, because so much of our existence is focused on the material, is focused on the physical, like our lives, what we do for work, what we consume, what materials we surround ourselves by. But by transcendence, it's talking about going beyond the physical, so going into perhaps the spiritual, or things that just cannot be manifested in reality with some sort of physical like good or product, something like that. So I think in terms of self-transcendence, you're essentially better identifying with the non-physical components of life, which all exists, because the thing is, we have this inherent consciousness that lies within us all, but it's not a physical thing. Like, you can't just put it in a box and place it over there. Like, it's something that is a part of our everyday awareness. So essentially, by transcending yourself, you're connecting with this higher consciousness that already lies within your own self, and then from that you're able to develop everything in your life. Because if you start developing that consciousness or that awareness within, it spreads out into everything you do, from your business to your relationships to your friendships to really everything in our lives. So I think that by listening to this podcast, but also talking and thinking more about ways in which you can transcend the self and connect with a higher self, higher consciousness, your spiritual self, you can call it all these different things, but it really allows you to see and seek your true self within, and then let that manifest into all avenues and aspects of your life, which I think is pretty good to do, because then you get to share it and experience life in a whole different way, which is truly beautiful and filled with love. So yeah.
And I see definitely like this, and as a way to see yourself as more than what you think it is, like beyond its boundaries.
Yes, absolutely. I think so many of the boundaries that we are currently facing for both ourselves and as a society are actually imposed by the self, and they're actually limitations that are complete illusions. So by engaging with self-transcendence, you're essentially able to view and see those limitations for what they are, illusions, and then to move beyond them and to completely break through those obstacles, which is obviously amazing, because by breaking through those obstacles and entering into new states of awareness, we can enter into new states of being, which means that we get to be the person that we want to be, or we want to achieve the things we want to achieve. Again, relationships, business, family, spirituality, like all of these things. And so it is just so crucial, I think, and so beneficial, and has so much value to engage with practices that allow for self-transcendence to occur, because then that allows you to live a beautiful life and then to contribute and serve those who you really care about.
Okay, and I think in the practices we can probably distinguish some that are more like a revelation, that are more one-off, and some that are more like everyday, maybe. So, but before we jump into it, when we talk about why it matters, so to remove your limitation, I think that can, I see what you mean, definitely, but that can sound, I don't know, a bit far from someone, or not that practical, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. I think to even bring it back to the more grounded reality.
Like, am I going to go to the gym or perform better at work, or like little things like connect better with people? Things.
Well, I think with so many things in life, by better understanding your role within it, you can already make it better, because we are the common denominator of our lives. No matter where you go or what you do, you're there. So you want to make sure that you're doing your best to understand yourself and your relationship with whatever it is you're doing. And so by engaging with practices of self-transcendence, you're able to better understand yourself and your relationship with what you're doing, no matter what it is. So I think it's probably the most practical thing you could be doing.
Yeah, and I think I was talking to you about it a little bit before. For me, very pragmatically too. If you want to operate well in the world and in society, it's good to be interested in other people and to share other people's success and like their friends too. And for me, feeling like my self is more than just me as a person, and that can sound a bit weird to some people, but that's a lot in the, like, let's say in the oneness text, but like feeling this and being able to feel that we're more connected, then really helps me share the success with other people, and people feel that, and that helps me too in this way.
Yeah, I think that's so true, and again highlights the importance of these relationships that exist in our lives, because by better understanding ourselves, we can better understand ourselves in relation to others, and nothing is singular. Like, everything that's occurred in our life hasn't occurred just because of us. Like, even the technologies we use, the relationships we have, everything, the fact that we are even alive is because of the relationship of our parents. And so by better establishing your own self, and then the way in which you relate to those relationships, it's just so beneficial for how to live your life in every way.
Yeah, and you touched on something I really like about personal growth. Is like the aim of being a better person, but then is very connected to the rest of the world. There's nothing selfish in it.
Yeah, the thing is, when you start living your life for others, and not just for yourself, you realize, one, how much that actually serves you more, but also how much more beautiful life is. Like honestly, like the more and more I'm able to connect with and contribute and serve to the lives of those around me, the more amazing everything becomes. And then I've found that by engaging in that kind of life, not only do I feel more fulfilled, but I'm able to spread that fulfillment to all the people that I care about, and hopefully even to the people I don't even know, which is why these interviews and podcasts and these books that we read, like they're attributing to this shift in consciousness for people to stop living in a selfish manner and to be able to live in a way that empowers not just themselves but all the people in their lives. So
and beautiful. We can jump then on I really want to talk later on if you think the world's awakening in general, so remind me of this if I forget
absolutely.
now. But I want to go more into your experience with especially, so you've done a few self-transcendence experiences. So we've been to Date with Destiny together. We're quite interested in the science of psychedelics. You've been to India.
I have. I just got back
to meditate. We've just done a breath work too.
We have.
Pretty
My
good.
first time doing breath work, absolutely amazing. If you haven't done it, I definitely look into that practice. I'm going to be doing it more for sure.
Well, the person who taught me breath work, Marja Jacobson, I interviewed her in this podcast. So
great.
if people are interested, they can have a listen to it. It was an amazing one. Like great energy. Like she's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but back to you though.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think.
Should we talk about India?
Yeah,
Your
for sure.
training at the Oneness Academy.
Well, I'll give them just some really quick context because we did meet a Date with Destiny. But what motivated me and inspired me to visit India for this meditation retreat actually happened at Date with Destiny, which is one of those great synchronicities in life. So on the third day, we were given an Om blessing by Tony. And during the course of that blessing, I had one of the most spiritually profound experiences of my entire life. And I'd been an avid meditator for probably just shy of 3 years prior. So I'd been able to enter into these states before, but never to this depth. And essentially in that meditation, I first became aware of the pure gratitude and appreciation that I had in my life and all the love that I was experiencing. But I experienced it in such a strong way at one singular moment, which just took me into this completely different state of awareness. And then after that, I was able to experience what is now called a life review, that I now know is called a life review, where you see your life. Then I saw the lives of all those around me. I saw my friends, my family, but then I saw my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and then I saw this lineage, my ancestry.
Do you see it through their eyes?
I know, imagine as if like I was kind of like an out-of-body experience. Like I saw my physical self, but then I saw like, imagine a long
like an
line.
observer.
Yeah, I was observing this.
Okay.
So imagine like a long line of people, but in every person that I saw, they were my ancestors, that people that had to come before in order for me to even be here in this present moment. And I saw that all the way to the dawn of humankind, like to the very beginning of our humanity. So I was like, what? Like, what is happening? Like, this is crazy. And so like I got really overwhelmed. It was such a beautiful experience, but I knew that having entered that state, which was so beautiful and such a deep experience that I had never felt before, I know I needed to build upon it and to develop that practice, which was oneness. So I made an intention at Date with Destiny to not only visit India and go to the temple for the process, but also to become a Diksha giver. And so recently, a few weeks ago, I did a course here in Sydney where I learned how to give Diksha, so now I can give the very blessing that Tony gave to me during the course that we did. And then the day after I got given that initiation, I went straight to India. Like literally the next day, I got on a flight to Chennai and then visited the temple, which is called Ekam in India. And so what I underwent was called the Ekam process, which is a 6-day course. I was there for 7 days total. And during the course of that process, you essentially enter into different kinds of meditation. You do 4 meditations, each being 1 hour in length, and so you do that essentially the entire day. And then those meditations would work through different components of the human experience. So the first meditation was called Parishkara Siddhi, which would be essentially removing the obstacles from your life. And then the second meditation would always be releasing and activating one of your 7 chakras. And we did 6. We didn't do the crown chakra because that requires very high level of wisdom, at least in the eyes of the monks at the Oneness Academy.
Okay.
And then the third meditation was always about setting and creating these beautiful intentions and fulfillment of desires in your life, things that you wanted to achieve.
Okay.
And they could be centered upon
So
yourself.
it's very practical.
Yeah, it's very practical. I think too many times people view meditation and these kind of spiritual practices as being some kind of woo-woo, like, yes, connecting with this higher self and like, you know, becoming one with the universe and everything. But the thing is that I think you can do both. Like, people who say you can't engage and have a really successful business and have really beautiful relationships whilst engaging with these kind of more new age practices, I think they're quite short-sighted. And it's all about developing these different practices in your life and how they can come together to create a beautiful life for you and what that means to you as opposed to what that means to anyone else. And so then you would create those intentions and those fulfillment of desires, and then finally you would finish with an enlightenment sutra, which is essentially, they had different themes throughout the course. So there was like stillness, sacred presence, and then it would usually finish with a beautiful ecstatic dance at the end, which is awesome because, you know, I think again, another great practice, ecstatic dance, amazing. Like, to be honest, dancing in itself is amazing, but especially ecstatic dance. So so that was essentially the way in which it was
ecstatic
structured.
dance, for the people who don't know what it is, it's kind of dancing with the flow, really not caring about the moves you make. Is that
it's just completely losing
it?
yourself in that moment and that experience in the music. I think so many times when we dance, you know, you're held back by the self-consciousness, you know, like, oh, do people think I look weird, or am I a bad dancer? Like, these are all these thoughts that are limiting us from just expressing ourselves. And so by entering into a beautiful date and then entering into a process like ecstatic dance, you're just able to be free and open up to the true authenticity of your life. Yeah,
I find that self-transcendence, like getting a bit out of your own self, or even looking at yourself a bit with an observer point of view sometimes, really helps to let go a bit. And you know, like, the way you dance doesn't matter that much, and, you know, if you do something weird, it doesn't matter that much.
The thing is, what is weird, James. Though? Oh, hey, James.
Sorry, James, someone else. There's a lot of amazing people we meet at Date.
Yes. I think that's another really beautiful thing, and another very practical application of self-transcendence and these kind of practices that allow us to enter into higher states of awareness, is that you begin to gravitate and bring relationships that serve you in your life. So, like, by engaging with practices like meditation, like ecstatic dance, like personal development, you begin to attract other people in your life who are on that same path and who want to contribute and serve to others, which are you. And then in return, you want to contribute and serve them. And so you begin to create this community, much like the Unlocked community, that help to serve and contribute to not only their own individual lives, but the lives of the community, the lives of others, and essentially the lives of all those important to us, which is really, really beautiful. So by engaging with different communities that have that goal, whether they're Unlocked, whether they're the Oneness Academy, which is where I did the meditation, or other communities and groups that are really helping to serve this shift in conscious awareness in the world, like, it's always a great time because you're developing that love and connection with people.
Definitely. Yeah. And I find, let's say, when you transcend a bit the self like this, I find it's easier, easier to connect in general.
Yes. I think that, at least in my own experience, through my meditation practice, especially oneness, because I think I kind of glossed over that. So oneness meditation is essentially your better connecting to and realizing this interconnectedness between everything. So of course there are different types of meditation, the most popular being mindfulness, where you're more focused on your breath and coming back to the present moment. But oneness has a particular element where you're really taking down the barriers between yourself and others.
Is it quite, because I'm doing Vedic meditation, also called transcendental meditation, and the idea in part of doing it is like many benefits, and the first benefits would be more like performance, stress relief, but some of them is also to realize that the boundaries of the self are not that big, because just to tell people who have not really been into these philosophies, the idea is that the self is a Maya, right? Like a kind of only present here in this reality, but that ultimately the self is the universe. Like everything is an extension of yourself.
Oh yes, definitely. Like I totally agree.
Are we going a bit far?
I think no.
It's just,
no,
for people to understand in the end, like what it means in the end, deeply. What self-transcendence. It's not just, oh, it's fun, I'm not myself. In the end, it's like the self is more than just my boundaries, and those practices make me realize this.
Yes, absolutely. I think for me, I'm sometimes, I probably shouldn't be, I should be more open, but sharing like my most awakened state of enlightenment, especially during my time in India, which I will actually share with you now. I think it's good that you touched on that. But sometimes I worry, which is actually the ego, that people will perhaps not understand or misconstrue the experience as to what it meant or what it could mean. But I think it would just be best to tell you what happened in my own experience, like always, and just be as authentic as I can. So on the 4th of the 7 days, I experienced what I believe to be a state of enlightenment. And just quickly, enlightenment is really awakening to a state that is beyond your current one. So I think that enlightenment and self-transcendence, there's a very strong connection there. And so for me, I was just finishing my 4th day, feeling amazing, and this moment of enlightenment didn't even come in the temple. I think people have these ideas of what enlightenment will look like. I'm going to be in the lotus position, like this, and going like for like 5 hours. No, enlightenment can literally come at the times in which, actually, I believe that enlightenment comes when you're least seeking it, when you're least focused on it. Because if you're really focused on something, especially something that's spiritually based, it will never come because you're constantly grasping at it, but you can't grasp something like enlightenment.
Yeah, the comparison people often use is like you don't get yourself to sleep trying hard to
exactly sleep. Like imagine if you're sleeping, you go, okay, go to sleep now, sleep. It's not working. Like it's very similar with enlightenment. So the moment that you fully let go of that expectation or attachment to achieving it is when you actually achieve it, which is one of those classic paradoxes that exists when talking about spirituality and enlightenment. But on the 4th day, we had just finished our first 2 meditations, and I went to lunch, and I was very lucky to meet a doctor who was attending the course alongside me. His name is Dr. Larry Harikin from Alaska, now living in Oregon. He doesn't have Facebook, but I'll have to email this to him. And we had a beautiful conversation just about his experiences and his meditation journey after having been a part of the Oneness Academy for 12 years, but having been to India back in '69. So this guy was a veteran, and I was very intrigued by his life and his experiences. And then as he was talking to me and discussing and explaining his own experiences of enlightenment, I was so fully present to that conversation and to his being that I completely lost my sense of self. Like I was no longer me. I was just fully resonating with and seeing myself in him and what he was telling me to me. And so in that moment, I saw no difference between his self and myself. Like they were two expressions of the same thing. Yeah. And in that moment, like I was just fully, like completely taken aback by the fact that I was seeing the world and living, but through an experience beyond my own self. I had transcended myself and connected with someone so deeply that we became one. And then that was just the tipping point, because once I became one with his experience of the world and his identity and his personage, that extended to everything immediately. Because once you make that once you make that awakened state within your experience of life, it goes from 1 to 100 instantly. So once you feel that sense of interconnectedness and oneness with one thing, you experience it with all things simultaneously, because there is no difference. If you can have that experience of oneness with one person or one object or one anything, what is the difference between that one thing and everything? And so in that moment, I was completely interconnected with life, the universe, and everything at all times. And so it was extremely intense, and it was very short. It was like a glimpse. Like people think that you got to enter into the state and you like, I don't know, something crazy happens, like light shoots out of your eyes or something weird. But
were you levitating?
I wasn't levitating. I know. I was, I was obviously attaching to the idea of levitation too much. But it was a small glimpse. But that's all you need. Once you glimpse these higher states of consciousness, and like it's a feeling. Like if you ask me, even to explain it, it is truly ineffable. Like these experiences, we do our best to explain them and break them down in the form of language so that we can communicate them and try to make sense of them, but really it's a pale reflection as to the experience itself. So I think that the best that I can do is just explain my story as it happened. So then that had happened, and it was a small glimpse, and but the glimpse was enough for me to really feel that these higher states of consciousness can be entered into through living a beautiful life and by engaging with certain practices, whether that's meditation, whether that's like breath work, and even things like surfing and stuff. I think people think too much of like, oh, we need to do yoga and all of these kind of spiritual practices, but it really comes back to what resonates with you. And if you feel like you enter into a higher state of awareness through any practice, no matter what it is, then that's meditation.
And what's really cool with that oneness thing is that feeling more connected creates better people.
I think so. I think we're all,
like, for example, with nature, like if you feel so connected to nature, you feel bad treating animals as we do, or treating nature as we do, and other people sometimes, and you have more compassion, right? When you feel we're all connected.
Yeah, definitely. I think that being in a beautiful state of and treating each other with compassion and kindness, that is our natural state. But then through our past experiences, past traumas, the way in which we're educated and told how the world should be and how we should act, and the way in which society is structured, we lose sight of that, which is where that kind of those negative and suffering states arise. And so by engaging again with practices like meditation and transcending the self, you're essentially able to move past all of those traumas, all those structures that aren't serving us, and live a life that's far more connected with our natural state, our beautiful state. And in that state, you will always gravitate towards contributing and serving to the lives of others and doing things out of love and kindness and compassion, and not out of hate, suffering, and fear, which is obviously a huge game changer.
And even not in from a place which is without even being hate, being like, I want to be worthy, or I want to be enough, or I want to belong. You know, and when you know you're part of it and you're it, you don't have that fight, and I guess then you can focus on your higher self better.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's so true, because again, by connecting with your own self in a deeper way, you're able to connect in a deeper way with others. And so much of my life I've really focused on the simplicity of things, because I think even with, you know, a lot of the topics we talk about and a lot of these books that we read, it can seem so complex, all these steps, all these procedures, all these strategies that we have to abide by, and all these rules. And so I think that really, if you can simplify your life, things become far more clear. And by simplifying and better understanding yourself and what you want, you can better understand others and what they want, and then create a beautiful relationship together. And then by doing that, you create a beautiful world. Like I think so many people are looking for ways and even like meaning of their lives, their purpose, and they're like, how can I change the world, and how can I be like a huge influencer or motivator for this change? But that change begins with you. Like, you have to create that change and understanding for yourself first, and then the moment you have that, you'll begin to take the right action to create the influence and change you want for others. But it all begins with the self, which again is why I'm so passionate about practices that engage with and allow for self-transcendence, because it's only by engaging with self-transcendence and growing and improving and better understanding your own self that you can do that for other people and create a world that we all want to live in. Yeah.
Is it Gandhi, like, be the change you seek to?
Probably.
You want to.
I think I can
be the
just
change you want to see in the world.
Be the change you want to see in the world. But the change begins. If that is Gandhi, I don't know. Comment below if it is Gandhi.
I mean, it's knowledge.
Yeah, it's knowledge.
Knowledge doesn't belong to anyone.
Yeah, and so like, if you want to be the change you want to see the world, the key is be first, do after. I think a lot of people, like, they also think too much. Like, one of my favorite lines from Date with Destiny is, get in your head, you're dead. And I think that's so true, because people overthink things, which cause them a lot of stress and anxiety. And so I think a lot of it, a lot of the simplicity in life comes with being. Like, you have to be first, and then you can only do after being. And so, like, for me, if I want to do good things, I have to be good, you know.
And then it just flows.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's another beautiful thing about engaging with like practices like oneness, because you have this interconnectedness, and by living in a life where you see the synchronicities that exist in the world through this interconnectedness between everything, you're able to enter into and stay with the flow of life, to able to move with things naturally, as opposed to going against the current of both your unconscious and conscious mind. And so by doing that, you realize that, again, another great line from Tony Robbins, that life is happening for you, not to you. So everything that happens, all these experiences that we have, whether they're positive or negative, good or bad, those are just labels we put on that thing from happening in that present moment, where in reality we don't know. But if we believe that life is happening exactly as it needs to and should be, well, then it just empowers you instead of takes you away and causes you to suffer. So again, another key insight into those practices and how they can serve you and others. And that doesn't mean like not wanting to change the world. It's just the first phase of accepting things as they are, and see then how you can do your best. Yeah, absolutely. And again, once you enter that state within yourself and you enter into that flow, the universe is going to start answering the call 100%. Like, it's going to start putting you in touch with people who have similar mindsets and viewpoints, just like me and Alex. You're going to start to connect with new business opportunities. new, like, in relationships, and just honestly, like, ever since I became and entered into more methods of self-transcendence and developing myself, but with the aim to better serve and contribute to the world and the lives of others, like, life has just gotten so much more beautiful. And if you want to, like, narrow it down into, like, complexities, like, I'm in a beautiful relationship with my amazing girlfriend. I'm planning on starting my business next year, which I'm sure, like, Alex will be a part of, and we can talk about that later.
Definitely.
And then also developing my spiritual practice, being a Diksha giver now, and also planning to go back to India definitely next year. And so I think you begin to, by entering into that understanding of your own self first, begin to manifest and create the life that's really going to empower and serve you and others. And it's just so exciting and so amazing. So if any of you get an inkling into meditation or practices in which to transcend the self, I would also highly recommend you engage with Unlocked in the community, because it has such great content. Like, Alex has really done a great job at getting to the heart of what can serve and contribute to you best, because we kind of took the long road. We slogged through all the books and all these podcasts, and we got there eventually. But I think that by engaging with a community like Unlocked, you're going to really see really amazing benefits in a very short amount of time. And like, for me, I personally did the time management program. And it was kind of like a refresher, because again, I had done the slog of years of listening to this stuff, but it was I could really see the structure of how it was set up. And if you're kind of on the newer side to these kind of practices or this way of experiencing life, like, highly recommended, because you're gonna essentially get what took us, like, years to figure out in, like, 2 weeks.
Thanks, bro. Well, that's exactly the idea. But it's funny because you said, the long practice, like books. If you think about it already, when we read a book, often we have someone who has an amazing life, or like a researcher or something, put as much as his knowledge as he can in a book.
Yes.
So for us, it's already a way to accelerate the learning already a lot. And obviously what I'm trying to do is to make that even more, so accelerate, like, a new form of accelerated learning through these programs.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it goes so fast now to learn, and we can learn so quickly that we feel like reading a book is the long road. While reading books, we get so much knowledge so quickly. As
opposed to the person who wrote the book, who had like a 30-year PhD.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, he's literally committed their entire lives to one topic.
It's like, wait, you had the Greek road too.
Yeah, exactly. And like, the fact that we can even talk about such high-level concepts after having engaged with these podcasts and these books from these people who have committed their lives to this research and these lifestyles and these ways of living at such a young age. Because we're both still.
I think that was very hard to do, like, even 30 years ago.
Yeah, extremely hard. Like, I mean, you can't just Google it. You got to really slog it through. So I think, again, coming back to practices, and if you're wanting to adapt and learn more about how these practices and techniques can serve you in your life, or if you're just genuinely curious, I think engaging with Alex's community Unlocked is a great place to start. And then we'll also have a link in this live on Facebook as well to the temple I went to in India, Ekam, and the academy is called Oneness.
I'll add the link to the podcast.
Yes, of course. And so that is a great resource for you guys to learn and explore more about these things that we may have not have touched on, that we didn't have time to touch on in this podcast. And
just before we wrap it up, I have a bit of a question on. So you're pretty young, and as we talked about the fact that this wasn't possible before, and also that this feeling of connectedness, I think, create better people. How do you see it evolve? do you think like there is kind of an awakening of the world at the moment? Sometimes I'm a bit in between. I'm like, I see people like you, I see the people I connect with, and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And people start to meditate all over the world. That's going to change the world.
Yeah.
And, and then I'm like, oh yeah, but Trump's the president of the US. So I'm like, is it my reality? Is it the reality? What do you think?
Oh, I definitely believe that there's a huge shift in the global consciousness happening right now. Absolutely. Not only through my own personal experiences, but all the things that I've seen and heard about in life throughout the globe. There's just far too many synchronicities and amazing things occurring right now for me to believe the opposite. Yes, of course, there are always going to be things that are working or maybe contributing to the suffering of the world, like particular people being in power, or natural disasters, or like climate change and all of the damage we're doing to Mother Earth and things like that. But I really believe that it is happening, perhaps not as quickly as it could be, but the shift is occurring. But I think that's why it's really important for those of us who especially live in developed countries and are more consciously aware of these topics and conversations, that we have a responsibility, not just to ourselves, not just to the people we love, but to those we don't know who are perhaps impoverished or living in a state of squalor, and also Mother Earth, that we have a responsibility to serve and contribute to them. Because again, once you stop living life for yourself and start serving and contributing to the lives of others, then that's where the true magic happens. Absolutely. So I definitely believe there's a conscious shift, and I'll be doing my best to attribute to and expedite that shift as much as possible. And finally, I also wanted to mention that I'll definitely be going back to India next year for a course, and I really encourage anyone who is interested can come with me. I'm still locking down the dates, but it'll probably be around like June, July or so. So I think, again, best to stay tuned with the Unlock community, because I'm sure I'll post some updates here. Also, add me on Facebook, Charlie Manor. If you want to stay in touch, feel free to send through messages and stuff like that. I love connecting with and reaching out to people about these kinds of things, because then I can serve you, which would be amazing. And so, yeah.
Fuck, you're amazing, bro.
Yeah, I love you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have had you in this interview, because I'm sure you're gonna bring a lot to the world, and especially to raising the consciousness of the world. So it's an honor for me to have you here.
Oh, it's an honor for me too, man. And no matter how much impact I make or how much impact you make, it's about the impact that we make together that's going to make the most profound and lasting change.
Let's do it, bro.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Peace,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.